Hey guys, tonight we diving into something quietly explosive. The kind of power that doesn't need to raise its voice. You've been there. Someone you trusted crossed a line. They swore they never would. They smiled in your face while placing quiet bets on your downfall. And then, when it all came to light, you didn't scream. You didn't retaliate. You didn't play their game. You just stepped back. And oddly enough, that's when things got loud, not around you, but inside them. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Like a pond after the storm, your thoughts settle, and the silence that follows is not empty, it's full. Of what, you ask? Dignity, power, certainty. And let me know where you tuning in from and what time it is. Always fun to know who is out there, sharing this quiet little rebellion with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together, to prove them right about you. But you didn't? You notice how still you've become. Not numb, not frozen, but centered. You chose stillness. And somehow, that silence makes them uncomfortable. Why? Because betrayals are built on expectation. They expected you to fight, to fall apart. They think your silence is a message, or a tactic, or a trap. That's what you're tapping into now. Except this time, it's not a game. You took a breath. They want to place their fingerprints all over your identity, to smear your character so they feel less guilty about what they did. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." You chose that path without saying a word. It's about control. They don't want a peaceful ending. They want the kind of ending that makes them feel in control again. They caused the rupture, but it's your calm that keeps them awake. And now they're watching, obsessing, wondering what's going on inside your head. Funny, isn't it? It's like breaking a mirror and expecting the shards to reflect you anyway. There is a certain kind of person who thrives on reactions, who feeds on drama the way some people crave sugar. It's natural. It's human. And when you take that away from them, you leave them pacing their own echo chamber, desperate to hear you scream back. And nothing is terrifying to people who live off manipulation. It's like oxygen deprivation to a fire. But you won't. You've learned the language of stillness. Started walking outside more, reading more, eating cleaner, sleeping better. Imagine being a kid again, holding your breath during hide and seek. That little rush of power as you become invisible, untouchable, stoic, not with rage, but with restraint. The texts, the signs, the half-truths, it all lined up. And instead of confronting them with drama, you simply walked away, blocked the number, removed the photos, dropping passive comments like breadcrumbs, hoping to pull you back in. It's survival. It's clarity. And you're starting to see what that actually feels like. To not just survive betrayal, but to transcend it. See, when someone betrays you, what they really want is to redefine who you are. But your silence? That messes with the plan, because it refuses to cooperate. It's a line drawn in moonlight that says, you may no longer pass here. You gave them space to sit with their own reflection, and they hate what they see there. And here is what they want to admit. Their obsession with your silence, I send tea about closure, but that's not your concern anymore. You're not living in their story. You've stepped into your own. Let's talk about that feeling for a moment. That itch to explain yourself, to defend your character, to make sure everyone knows your side of the story. But it's also a trap, because while you're busy justifying, they're collecting sound bites, twisting your words, using your voice against you. Silence, on the other hand, gives them nothing. So ask yourself, why give fuel to a flame that only wants to burn you? Seneca once wrote, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable." Let's make this a little more modern. Not all at once, but enough to start rebuilding. Say you just went through a brutal breakup. You caught them lying, maybe even cheating. Your screen dimmed, your heart slowing back to normal. No cryptic posts, no angry texts, no begging or bargaining. Now they're refreshing your social media, reaching out to mutual friends. Why? Because they're no longer the center of your world. And worse, they have no idea who you're becoming without them. That silence? That absence? That's the part that haunts them. You didn't give them closure. The truth is, silence isn't passive. It's precise. It's intentional. And if they obsess over that boundary, that's their burden, not yours. The question to sit with is this. Are you trying to be understood by someone who benefits from misunderstanding you? That one hurts, because sometimes we're still looking for validation in the eyes of the person who broke us. But now you're relearning that peace doesn't come from being heard. It comes from not needing to be. And once that clicks, the betrayal loses its fangs. It becomes background noise to the rhythm of your own steady breath. Because you don't need revenge. You don't need applause. You don't even need closure. All you need is that quiet space where your soul gets to speak again, uninterrupted. You'll notice something else too. When you stop fighting for someone who wouldn't even meet you halfway, your energy returns. And while they're out there spinning tales about what happened, trying to provoke a reaction, you're here, with your fan humming. And tonight, that's more than enough. You quietly hold your ground, and to the one who expected your collapse, that restraint feels like thunder. It's wild how people expect you to break after they've betrayed you. Like it's part of the deal. They act out, lie, twist the truth, maybe even smear your name, and then they sit there waiting. For the screaming, the crying, the spectacle. But it doesn't come. You just breathe. You keep walking. And that alone becomes the loudest sound in the room. See, to a betrayer, silence isn't nothing. It's a message, a verdict. A mirror turned back on them, one they can't smash. Because your calm presence reveals a truth they can't control. You're not destroyed. You're just done. There's a kind of strength in refusing to perform your pain for others. You've felt that, haven't you? Watched. Let them squirm in their own noise. That's not weakness. It's war without blood. No flinch. No sarcasm. Just silence. Someone tried to pull you into chaos, and instead of dancing to their tune, you sat still. You remember that now, each time the old urge stirs in your gut to clap back, defend, lash out. You shift the spotlight off yourself and let it cook them instead. A fake smile, a twisting of facts, just enough venom to make people raise an eyebrow at you. You go home, and maybe it hits you there when no one's watching. In the quiet of your room, or in the car, parked 2 blocks from your apartment, staring out at nothing in particular. But it fades, because you've tasted what it's like to not be mastered by anyone. You no longer trade your dignity for temporary relief. Epictetus said, any person capable of angering you becomes your master. Let's paint a scene. You're in a meeting. Someone may be a coworker, maybe even someone close throws you under the bus. Publicly, subtly. When you don't give them that they spiral. Kind of like someone tapping on a microphone. Is this thing on? Everyone turns, waiting for your reaction. Like walking away from someone screaming your name behind you. Not because it feels good, but because it's right. You feel your jaw tighten for half a second, and then you release it. You nod once, eyes steady. You reply only with facts, and only if needed. No defense, no over-explaining, no emotion. Between choosing not to react and simply shutting down. And now, the room isn't just watching you. It's watching them. They just exposed their game. You didn't have to say a thing. That's what happens when you sit with discomfort instead of reacting to it. It's one of life's greatest ironies. Your silence becomes the trap they set for themselves. But this doesn't mean you're unaffected. It hurts. It stings. That's okay. That's human. Stillness doesn't mean numbness. It means you've chosen to carry your pain inward. Let it burn clean. Let it teach you something deeper. The people who betrayed you, they need your chaos. It reassures them. It makes them feel right. And oddly enough, they'll try to provoke you again. They shut down, go cold, block everything out. That's not stoicism. That's self-abandonment. Talking to new people, smiling for no reason, sleeping better, drinking your coffee slower. They'll push your buttons, test your silence, accuse you of being passive-aggressive or too cold. But you see through that. You've learned the difference between peace and pretending. That makes them question the entire story they've told themselves about what happened. Your calm is active. It's deliberate. You've got nothing to prove and everything to gain. It's standing in a storm, coat open, hair soaked, saying, "This weather will pass, but I remain." Here's the trick, though it doesn't feel powerful at first. It feels like restraint, like biting your tongue so hard it hurts. But you do it anyway. It's for you. You're not trying to win the argument anymore. You're trying to win yourself back. Now, ask yourself this. Are you holding your silence like a sword or like a wound? It matters. Because some people think they're being stoic, when really, they're just scared. True stoic calm doesn't hide. It stands tall. It's not armor, it's skin. Honest, vulnerable, and strong. And here's what's crazy. The moment you stop chasing people for closure ... is the moment they start chasing your peace. Because calm silence after betrayal is confusing. They expect rage. But calm? Maybe they weren't the hero after all. Maybe you weren't the villain. Maybe. You were the only one who ever actually cared. And now they sit with that. While you continue living, you start showing up to life again, quietly. Reading books they'd mock. And they can't stand it. Because you didn't react, you recovered. Let that be the reminder. Your silence isn't empty. It's the sound of you choosing yourself. So keep choosing. Keep building. Keep resting. They speak into your silence, hoping for a reaction, because ego is terrified of echoing into a void. You've seen it before. The long messages sent after days of quiet. The sudden, just checking in texts that come wrapped in fake concern. The random likes on your old photos. The weird way they mention you in passing to mutual friends, hoping it'll find its way back. But none of that is for clarity. It's a test. They're throwing pebbles at your window, not because they want to talk, but because they want to know if you're still listening. If you'll open that window and yell back. If they still have access to your energy. And when you don't respond, not out of spite, but because you've outgrown the game, the silence becomes louder than anything you could have said. That's the thing no one tells you. Silence isn't neutral. It's charged. To the person who wronged you, it's a threat. Not because you're being cruel, but because you've stepped into something they can't manipulate, peace. An ego doesn't know what to do with peace. Ego wants noise. Applause, even hatred, anything but indifference. As Marcus Aurelius put it, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. You've taken that to heart. You've stopped trying to control how others see you. You're too busy tending to your own garden. But of course, their ego didn't expect this. It expected resistance. It expected a storm. Instead, it got a locked gate. A calm face. A single nod that said, "This conversation is over." So now they keep circling back. Not because they miss you, but because they miss the version of themselves that had your attention. Your silence isn't just your boundary. It's their exile. Picture this. You're walking down the street. You see someone from your past, someone who caused a fracture in your life. They notice you. Their face tightens with something that looks like guilt, or maybe entitlement. And just as they open their mouth to speak ... You smile softly, nod, and keep walking. No pause. No coldness. Just ... nothing left to give. That moment? That's the echo they'll hear all night. Because ego can't survive the absence of reaction. It's like shouting into a canyon and hearing nothing back. No sound. No return. Just space. That space? That's what kills them. Not the betrayal. Not your anger. But the stillness you leave in your wake. A silence that makes them wonder, was I ever important to them at all? You don't answer. You don't need to. And you start to see how your silence changes you too. In the beginning, it was hard. It felt like swallowing a scream. Like you were punishing yourself by staying quiet. But over time, it becomes something else. A quiet that clears your mind. A stillness that lets your body breathe again. A kind of freedom that no reaction could have bought you. Because reacting is expensive. It costs your peace, your dignity, your progress. And once you realize that, you become picky with what you respond to. You start noticing that not every invitation deserves a yes, especially the ones wrapped in manipulation. So when they post something designed to provoke you, you let it sit. When they throw subtle jabs hoping you'll bite, you chew on something better, your peace. And when they send the, "I know we didn't end well, but I still care" text, you remember what they did the last time you believed that line. And you don't even get angry anymore. You just breathe ... and let it pass. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." And it takes real bravery to walk away from something that used to define you. To not prove your worth to someone who refused to see it. To stay silent when every bone in your body wants to scream. But you've done it. You're doing it. And every time you do, you get stronger, quieter, wiser. Now here's the question to ask yourself. Does their opinion still have a key to your peace? If the answer is yes, that's okay. You're not failing. You're healing. But recognize it. Notice where your energy goes when you think of them. And ask if that is where you want to live, inside someone else's ego trip. Because you deserve better. You deserve quiet nights that don't end in overthinking. Mornings without anxiety. Friends who don't make you earn their loyalty. You deserve to not be performing all the time. That's what silence gives you. Space, breath, stillness. And from that place, you begin again. You rediscover who you are when you're not trying to prove anything. You build things quietly. Projects, passions, a life. All without needing anyone's applause. And they'll notice. Oh, they'll notice. Because ego always looks back at what it has lost, especially when that loss glows in quiet confidence. So let them keep talking to your silence. Let them obsess. Let them guess. You've got peace to protect, and a new chapter to write. What you done to say reflects everything they done to want to see, and it is unbearable. You start to realize something strange. The less you speak, the more they squirm. The more peace you practice, the more chaos they feel. You're no longer engaged in the conflict, but somehow your calm still burns them, quietly, slowly, without ever raising its voice. That's because silence is reflective. It's not passive. It's a mirror. And to the betrayer, to the one who acted with cruelty or cowardice, that mirror becomes unbearable. Your quiet doesn't accuse them. It reveals them. It shines back all the things they'd hoped to hide, from others and from themselves. They expected noise, blame, drama, but instead you gave them a clean, polished stillness. And now, all they see is their own guilt, uninterrupted by your explanations. There's a quote from Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism. "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more than we say." But here's the twist. Sometimes silence speaks more than listening. It becomes a form of resistance. A signal that says, you don't get to twist the narrative anymore. You stop correcting the lies. Stop defending the truth. You just go silent, and somehow it turns into the biggest revelation of all. Picture this. You once trusted someone, maybe deeply. They wronged you, not just by accident, but with a kind of intentional carelessness that left you spinning. And after it all unraveled, they did what most manipulators do. They rewrote the story. Suddenly, you were the problem, the one who overreacted, the one who took it the wrong way. They made themselves the victim in their own carefully edited version of events. And yet, you didn't argue. You didn't take the bait. You didn't drop screenshots, or call a meeting, or post a thread. You just stepped away. Now they're uncomfortable. Why? Because they're talking, and you're not. They're explaining, and you're not listening. They're crafting scenes, but your absence is louder than any word they speak. Your silence exposes them, not because you intended to, but because the truth has a way of making itself known in stillness. Like how muddy water clears when left alone. When someone betrays you, they hope the aftermath is so messy that no one sees the truth. But when you remove yourself, when you stop adding noise, it becomes obvious what really happened. And here's the part they never expect. Your calm forces them to face themselves. You become like a closed door that they can't stop knocking on, not to reconnect, but to find relief from what they're now carrying. Their guilt, their shame, their spin, their fear that you might not just be done with them, but that you might be better off because of it. And what if you are? That question alone becomes their obsession. You're out there taking walks, making art, learning things, laughing at quiet jokes with people who actually respect you. And suddenly, your peace becomes the proof of their failure, not just in how they treated you, but in who they chose to be. Here's a modern analogy. Imagine someone stealing money from your wallet, not because they needed it, but because they didn't think you'd notice. And when you find out, you don't scream. You don't chase them down the street. You just look them in the eye, nod, and leave. They spend the next month telling people how weird you've been acting, trying to prove that they didn't really steal. It was just a misunderstanding. They show receipts. They invent motives. But in the background, you're rebuilding, quietly, calmly. That silence, it drives them crazy, because there's no one left to argue with, no one left to confuse. They only have the mirror now, and it's not cracked anymore. So here's your reflection question tonight. What truth have you been trying to explain that silence might reveal more clearly? Sometimes it's not about telling your side louder. It's about stepping back and letting time draw the outline. You've probably seen it happen. Someone does you dirty, then starts pre-defending themselves, posting vague memes, making subtle jabs, bringing you up in conversations like a ghost they can't shake. That's not confidence. That's fear. That's a conscience running from its own shadow. And meanwhile, you've gone still. And guess what? In that stillness, people do notice. Not just them, others too. The real ones. The ones who weren't sure what happened, but now see how you carry yourself. No mess, no drama, just peace. That kind of behavior speaks louder than any rant. It builds credibility. It creates mystery. And most importantly, it protects your energy. So next time someone tries to pull you into a mess, remember this. The mirror belongs to them now. Let them look. You've got peace to tend, a life to design, a future to quietly walk into with clean hands and a calm heart. Let your silence do the reflecting. It's working. Your steady gaze denies them the script, the control, the chaos they crave, and that drives them mad. You ever notice how people who manipulate others always seem to rely on the same dance? They push, you flinch. They lie, you react. They accuse, you explain. And if you stop playing along, if you just stop moving, they panic. Because without your predictable reaction, they have no scene to perform in. No villain to defeat. No chaos to orchestrate. You've removed yourself from their theater, and now they're left staring at a stage with no audience and no spotlight. That drives them mad. It's not your silence alone that shatters them. It's what you withhold when you go silent. Your expressions. Your eyes. Your tone. Your energy. All the little cues that used to tell them what role to play next. But now, your steady gaze gives them nothing. You don't look away in shame. You don't glare in anger. You don't blink with uncertainty. You just look, still, calm, present. And for someone who's used to manipulating emotion, that's the equivalent of cutting the power mid-performance. Their script no longer fits the moment. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. You've taken that to heart. You've trained your face to hold peace. Not as a performance, but as a promise to yourself. Let me give you a scene. You're at a dinner gathering. A shared friend invites someone who wronged you in the past. You didn't expect it. Maybe you wouldn't have come if you had known. But now you're here. So is they. And across the table, they try it. A smirk, a joke, a little poke under the radar. Testing the water to see if the old dance still works. You sip your drink, glance once, and say nothing. Maybe your face doesn't even shift. Just a soft awareness, like a breeze moving through the room. No drama, no coldness, just ... unbothered. And now they are the one who's rattled. They keep glancing your way, desperate to recalibrate, desperate for a read, but you give them no script. Just a page they can't write on. You see, manipulators hate neutrality. It leaves no opening, no angle, no lever to pull. They want big emotion, outrage, breakdown, obsession, because that tells them you're still invested, that they still hold a thread inside you. But when you're calm, when you've unplugged from the drama, they lose access to your internal world. And that silence is terrifying to them. Your gaze, your posture, your breath, all still, all sovereign. Because you've stepped into your own power now, and power doesn't perform. Here's a twist. They might try to flip it, to tell others you're cold, distant, that you've changed. Of course you have. You've grown. You've realized that some people don't want healing. They want chaos they can blame on you. And you've stopped giving it to them. Let them call it cold. You know it's clarity. Let them call it distance. You know it's boundaries. Let them call it silence. You know it's wisdom. Seneca said, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. This was your friction. And you didn't just survive it. You refused to let it shape you into something small. So now when someone tries to provoke you, with rumors, with guilt, with silence of their own, you smile, not smugly, but gently, because you see the pattern, and you've chosen not to play. Here's your question for tonight. Where in your life are you still reading from someone else's script? Maybe it's that friend who always needs you to be the fixer, or that ex who only reaches out when they need validation, or that boss who keeps you in a loop of proving yourself. And maybe, just maybe, your calm refusal to keep playing that role is what finally sets you free. You're not being cruel. You're being clear. You're letting people experience the natural consequence of their own behavior, your distance. And if they obsess over that, that's their own internal chaos, trying to find somewhere else to live, but not in you. Not anymore. You've closed the script. You've stepped off the stage. Now you walk the quiet path, eyes forward, gaze steady, soul unshaken. Let them scramble to rewrite the story. You've already moved on to better chapters. They were counting on your outburst to prove their point. Now they left rewriting history to themselves. You know the type. The ones who twist the story just enough so they can be the misunderstood hero. They need you to explode, lash out, maybe even humiliate yourself, because then they get to say, see, That's what I was dealing with. It's their favorite trick. They provoke you, push every emotional button you've got, maybe even cross the line with a grin, all while secretly praying you'll snap, because your reaction becomes their justification. Your pain becomes their permission. But when you don't react, when you refuse to let their actions puppeteer your emotions, they're left holding a script with no climax, no audience, no redemption arc. That's when the real story begins. Not yours, theirs. The private one. The one they have to start whispering to themselves at 2 a.m. just to make sense of why you didn't crumble. And trust me, that story keeps changing. At first, it's they're immature. Then, they're too sensitive. Then, they're just trying to make me feel guilty. Then ... silence. Because none of it holds up when you stay calm and keep living. Seneca put it plainly. Time discovers truth. And when you go quiet, you give time permission to speak on your behalf. You don't have to shout to be heard. You just keep walking. Let's picture this. You and someone close had a falling out. Maybe it was ugly. Maybe it was subtle. They said things. You didn't. And now you hear bits and pieces through the grapevine. Little edits. Little rewrites. You become the one who changed. The one who walked away. The one who overreacted. And for a moment, it stings. Because you know the truth. And watching someone weaponize your silence like that feels like being punished twice. But then you remember, their story only works on people who don't know you, or people who benefit from believing it. And those people, they're not your people. They never were. So instead of fighting the narrative, you drop the pen. You let them write their version, while you go live the real one. That's what they can't stand. You're not denying what happened. You're transcending it. And that creates a kind of dissonance in their world. Because if you're not angry, not bitter, not breaking down ... maybe they were the problem all along. That's the thing about silence. It's fertile ground. It grows clarity. And clarity can be brutal for people who built their world on illusion. So they start rewriting again. This time, not to the world, but to themselves. They need to believe something, anything. Because if they face the real version, the version where they hurt someone who didn't fight back, who just walked away with grace, they'll have to reckon with something uglier than guilt, responsibility. And that is a heavy weight for someone who has been skating on blame their whole life. But here's where you win. You don't carry it for them. You don't waste time trying to correct every whisper. You don't post cryptic messages or gather mutual friends to your side. You don't need to, because you're building a life that doesn't require defending. Your peace speaks for you now, your energy, your posture, your new boundaries. And guess what? The people who matter, they notice. They notice that you didn't turn bitter, that you didn't start slinging mud, that you just ... better. And one day, so will the ones who doubted you. They'll hear the full story in your laugh, in your consistency, in your joy. They'll see it in how you love again, how you trust again, not recklessly, but bravely. With discernment, not fear. Because that's the real win, not the gotcha, not the takedown, but the quiet, everyday rebellion of choosing growth over revenge. So here's your reflective question. What would happen if you stopped trying to be understood by the wrong people? Sit with that. What would you gain if you stopped spending your days explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you? What would bloom in that space? A new habit, a new friendship, a deeper relationship with yourself, the energy to pursue something that matters, something that's never required a justification. That's where your focus belongs now. Not on rewriting the story they tell, but on living the one they never saw coming. Let them sit with the silence. Let them fumble through their edits. You've already moved on to a chapter they'll never be part of. Not because you're cruel, but because you're clear. And clarity? That's not something you argue. It's something you live. By choosing not to engage, you hold power over what enters your inner peace, and they can't follow you there. There's this quiet sanctuary you start to build after betrayal. Not a physical place, but something internal. A garden, maybe. Or a mountain cabin in your mind. It's quiet, unshaken, completely yours. And here's the beautiful part. Not everyone gets an invitation in. Especially not the ones who broke it. You've begun to understand something Stoics have always known. That real peace is into the absence of conflict. It's the refusal to let that conflict into you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And now, that's exactly what you are doing. You're no longer reacting to every knock on your emotional door. You're not rushing to defend, fix, justify, or prove. You don't sit in bed at night rehearsing things you should have said. You don't carry their name like a wound under your shirt. You're just ... still. And in that stillness, you notice something incredible. Your power returns, not through revenge, not through one last word, but through the radical decision to protect your peace as if it were sacred, because it is. Imagine this. You're walking through a quiet forest. The sun's streaming through the trees. There's a soft rustle of wind, a smell of pine and earth. And then you hear shouting in the distance, familiar voices calling your name, saying things that sting. But you don't turn back. You keep walking. The further you go, the fainter it gets, until it's just wind again, just breath, just you. That's what it feels like when you stop engaging. You notice how many arguments used to start, not because someone said something cruel, but because you responded to it. Because your peace was still up for grabs, still negotiable. Not anymore. You've set a boundary now, an invisible moat around your heart. Not a wall, not a prison, a space. And they can't follow you there. You'll see them try. Oh, they'll try. They'll poke at your silence, accuse you of ghosting or being selfish, or not being mature enough to talk. They'll dangle guilt like bait. I just thought you were better than this. Guess you never really cared. So this is how it ends? You used to respond. You used to drop your peace to pick up their pain. But now, you smile gently. You see it for what it is, an attempt to pull you back into a version of yourself you've outgrown. And you say no, not out loud, not in anger, just with your energy, with your absence. Because you've stopped living at the mercy of other people's storms. And that drives them wild. Not because you're punishing them, but because they suddenly realize they don't live in your head anymore. They don't get to shape your mornings, interrupt your nights, or hijack your joy. You've reclaimed the lease on your own mind. Let's talk modern life for a moment. You ever log into your social media, see their name pop up, and feel your heart spike just a little? That tiny twist in your gut? That ache of memory? It used to own you. But now you pause, breathe, scroll past. No panic, no obsession. Just a little gratitude that you're no longer living under their emotional weather system. You're your own atmosphere now, your own forecast. And no, it's not always easy. Sometimes you still want to say something, to call them out, to make them see. But then you remember, your peace is not a performance. It's a private ceremony, and you're the only one invited. Ask yourself this, what's more important? Being understood ... or being free? That's the line you walk now. That's sacred ground, where silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Where not engaging isn't avoidance, it's evolution. You stop explaining yourself to people who heard you the first time. You stop giving closure to those who slammed the door. You stop offering your heart to hands that only want control. And in doing so, you become someone they can't touch anymore. Not because you're untouchable, but because you're unavailable to chaos. You start waking up slower, drinking water before checking your phone, noticing the way light hits your walls, laughing in rooms where no one needs you to shrink. They feel it. Even if they're miles away, they feel it. That you're gone, not physically, but spiritually, energetically. Your attention no longer orbits around them. Your heart no longer flinches at their memory. And the obsession? It begins in them now. Because peace, real peace, is magnetic and maddening to those who thought they'd ruined you. Let them wonder. Let them obsess. Let them sit with the silence. You've got a life to build. Your silence confronts them with a truth louder than any argument. They lost access to you. There's a moment, maybe it's subtle, maybe it's seismic, when someone realizes they no longer have a seat in your life. Not a front row. Not even standing room. It's not because you made a big announcement. You didn't slam a door. You didn't unfollow them with fanfare. You just stopped answering. Stopped reacting. Stopped needing them to understand. And in that silence, something shifts. They realize the connection wasn't paused. It's gone. And that terrifies them more than any shouting match ever could. Because now, there's no thread left to pull, no leftover tension to weaponize, no trace of your emotional availability for them to tap into. You didn't just withdraw, you reclaimed. And that reclamation? That's what haunts them. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, only what you do." And that's your life now, not uncaring, not cynical, just detached. You care deeply, but no longer about things that cost you yourself. Let's be honest. There was a time when someone's opinion of you could ruin your day. A comment, a tone, a passive-aggressive joke. It stuck to you like oil. You'd replay it, obsess over it, draft imaginary replies in your head. But now, you let it fall. Like raindrops on pavement. Heard, felt, gone. Because you've done the work. The internal cleaning. You've tended the roots of your worth so well that someone else's chaos can't reach you anymore. They know it too. That's why they keep checking. They might not text. They might not comment. But they're watching. Not out of love, out of curiosity, out of ego. They want to see if your peace is real, if your silence is a tactic or a transformation. And when they realize it has the latter, that this I sentia phase at a foundation, their obsession deepens. You don't owe them an explanation. And yet, your very being becomes one. Your calm, your boundaries, your laughter, your glow. They remember the access they had to you, the inside jokes, the soft places, the way your energy once bent to accommodate them. Now it doesn't, and that feels like loss. Here's the hard truth. They didn't expect you to outgrow them. They thought the bond, the history, the guilt, something would keep you tethered. But it didn't, because you chose self-respect over nostalgia. You let go of what it used to be, for the sake of who you're re-becoming now. And in that letting go, you broke the spell. Picture this. You're walking through an old neighborhood, one you used to know every inch of. The cracked sidewalks, the familiar doors, the smell of rain on pavement. You pass by a house you once spent years in. You used to laugh there, cry there, feel safe there. But today, you keep walking. You don't stop. You don't knock. You don't even glance back. Not out of bitterness, but because that chapter closed and you honored it by moving forward. That's what your silence is now. Not a weapon, a memorial to what was and what never will be again. And if that truth stings them, that's the consequence of mistaking your kindness for permanence. They thought you'd always be there, available, forgiving, predictable. But you learned, you adapted, you healed. And now your absence is louder than your presence ever was. Here's your reflective question. Are you confusing your silence with avoidance? Or is it actually evidence of your growth? Sometimes we second-guess ourselves. Was I too harsh? Did I disappear too suddenly? Should I give them another chance? But silence doesn't always mean cutting someone off. Sometimes it's just choosing yourself, choosing not to re-enter dynamics that dishonor your spirit, choosing peace even if it looks like distance, choosing presence but not in places that keep wounding you. You've changed, and not in the way they warned others about. They've changed as if it is a bad thing. You've changed like trees change with seasons, like rivers change course, naturally, inevitably, beautifully. And while they cling to the version of you that no longer exists, you've already stepped into the next iteration, stronger, softer, wiser. You no longer need to be louder than their assumptions. Your peace speaks louder than their need to be right. And the people who matter, they'll notice, they'll feel it. They'll meet you in the stillness, not with confusion, but with respect. So tonight, take a moment, close your eyes, breathe into that inner space. You're not running from anyone. You're returning to yourself. And in doing that, you've already won. Python REPL copy edit. The moment they realize you're healing without them is the moment the obsession truly begins. There's something quietly devastating to people who betray you, watching you come back to life, without needing them in the room. You don't post about it. You don't announce your comeback. You just glow a little brighter, breathe a little deeper, laugh without rehearsing it. And that sends a wave through them deeper than anything you could have said in anger. Because for a long time, they were the main character in your pain. But now, they're not even in the credits. They thought you'd sit in that moment of betrayal forever, revisiting it, recycling it, re-feeling it. They thought their role in your story was permanent. But healing made their presence optional. And that's what ignites the spiral. You're moving forward without permission. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And you've finally done that, disconnected their behavior from your worth. Stopped searching their face for the validation they never planned to give you. Stopped measuring your healing by their remorse. You realize healing isn't loud. It doesn't need closure. It just needs consistency. And that's what drives them to obsess. You're not reacting. You're not bitter. You're better. You got out of the loop. The drama. The maybe someday we'll talk again fantasy. You're living a life that doesn't leave space for them to re-enter. Imagine it. You're walking through a bookstore or sipping your coffee alone on a Tuesday. You're smiling at something small, maybe the warmth of the mug, or a song playing faintly in the background. Someone sees you. Someone who once had the power to ruin your entire week with one text. And now, they're just a glance in a crowd. That soft peace you radiate, it's unmistakable and unbearable for them. Because you didn't just survive them. You outgrew needing anything from them. And now they have to live with that reality. That the one person they thought they broke beyond repair didn't break, didn't stay stuck, didn't shrink. You grew, quietly, intentionally, without asking for applause. So what do? They search for cracks, old messages, old photos. They mention you in conversations, hoping someone will report back. They check your profile to see if you're sad, angry, bitter. But all they find is stillness, and signs of life. You're doing things you love again, without making a scene, without curating it for their consumption. You're not being loud about your joy, and somehow that makes it feel even more real. You're in your season of soft power, not flaunting your wins, but fully inhabiting them. Not trying to show them what they lost, because you've lost interest in their gaze entirely. And they feel it. That quiet separation, that disinterest, that release. They realize they don't live in your mind anymore. And they panic, not because they loved you well, but because they thought your pain was theirs to keep. Here's the kicker. They don't miss you. They miss the version of themselves that felt important through your attention, through your arguments, your reactions, your heartbreak. And without that mirror, they feel hollow. So they circle back, maybe not directly, maybe through shared friends, maybe through vague social media posts, maybe through silence so pointed it's practically a message, but it doesn't land because you've healed to the point where it doesn't even register as personal anymore. You don't need to dissect every post. You don't need to decode every move. You're not decoding anything. You're decorating your piece. Here's the reflective question for tonight. What are you ready to stop waiting for permission to enjoy again? Maybe it's music you shared, a place you loved, a version of yourself you silenced to survive. You don't need their closure. You don't need their, "I'm sorry." You don't even need their understanding. You just need breath, stillness, the willingness to give yourself back to yourself. So do that. Return to the version of you that existed before they taught you how to doubt your worth. And go further. Become someone they never even imagined. Because while they're obsessing over how you're healing ... you're not obsessing at all. You're living. Healing in silence exposes what they never expected. You didn't need closure. You needed distance. Closure is romanticized. We grow up believing it's this neat little conversation. One final meeting where the person who hurt you suddenly becomes honest, apologetic, emotionally available. They say all the right things, and you get to walk away with your piece neatly handed back to you like a receipt. But real life doesn't hand out receipts. And people who betray you rarely offer real closure, because that would require self-awareness, courage, and a willingness to lose control of the story. So, what do? You create your own, not with drama, not with a long speech, but with a decision to let distance be the healing space you were hoping a conversation would create. Zeno said it best. Well-being is attained little by little, and nevertheless is no little thing itself. And in your quiet healing, you realize something powerful. You don't need them to acknowledge what they did in order to acknowledge what it did to you. That's your responsibility now, not theirs. There was a time when you believed closure meant honesty. That one day, they'd wake up with a clear head, shoot you a message, and say, "Hey, I've been thinking a lot. I realized I hurt you." And maybe they do, but usually not. More often, the silence stretches. The distance becomes permanent. And you're left wondering, do I really have to heal without ever getting answers? The answer? Yes, and you can. Because closure was never about what they say. It's about what you decide. You decide you're done rewriting the story to make sense of their behavior. You decide to stop waiting for someone who made you feel invisible to suddenly see you. You decide to stop building your piece on the hope that they'll be better than they've already shown you. And in that moment, you stop asking for closure and start giving yourself freedom. Let me paint the picture. You're sitting in your room late at night. No noise, no distractions. And your mind wanders to that old wound. You wonder if you could have handled it better. You replay moments. Then suddenly, you stop, because you realize it's not your job to fix what they broke. It never was. That quiet moment, that's your closure. It didn't come in the form of an apology or a long phone call. It came from reclaiming your power over the narrative, from choosing not to base your healing on someone else's emotional maturity. You see, manipulators depend on the closure myth. They know that as long as you're waiting for answers, they still have your attention. Your heart is still open. Your mind is still turning their choices into puzzles to be solved. But once you choose distance, real distance, not just physical but spiritual, they lose their final grip on you. And that's when the obsession begins. Not yours, theirs. Because while they were expecting a reaction, you disappeared into your healing. And healing, when done quietly, becomes its own storm. One that doesn't rage, it cleanses. One that doesn't destroy, it renews. You start to feel lighter. The noise in your head dims. You laugh again, unguarded. You move through your day without narrating it for them in your mind. And the peace? It feels so foreign at first that it almost scares you. Like you're missing something. But you're not. You're just not missing them. That's the real revelation. You thought closure would help you forget. But it turns out, distance helped you remember who you were, what you need, what you'll never tolerate again. And while they're still waiting for a response, checking if you've watched their story, liked their post, taken the bait, you're somewhere else entirely. Maybe cooking, maybe journaling, maybe falling in love with someone new, or better yet, with yourself. And they know it. Even if they can't say it out loud, they feel the distance. Not cold, not cruel, just final. Here's your question to close this section. What closure have you been waiting for that you could quietly give yourself tonight? Maybe it's deleting a thread you've reread too many times. Maybe it's muting their account without telling a soul. Maybe it's writing them a letter and burning it. Whatever it is, remember, you don't need their cooperation to heal. You just need to stop offering them space in your peace. Because that space, it's sacred now, and only people who can respect it and protect it get to enter. Let them sit in the echo of your absence. You've moved into clarity, and you're not going back. They assumed your quiet meant weakness until they saw how much you grew in it. There is a certain smugness some people carry after betrayal, this unspoken belief that you'll never recover, that you'll always be the one who got hurt, that you'll carry the shame while they get to move on, untouched, unbothered. They assume that silence equals collapse, that if you're not screaming, you're drowning. But Stoicism, and now you know the truth. Silence isn't where the damage happens. It's where the repair begins. And when the dust settles, and they look back to check if you're still shattered, they see something else entirely. Growth. You've changed. Not in loud, performative ways, but in the subtle, radiant ways that make you unrecognizable to the version of yourself they once manipulated. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's what you did, quietly, patiently, consistently. You rewrote your estimate of the pain. You stopped seeing it as a sentence and started treating it as a season. And seasons? They pass. Let's talk about real change. There was a time when their voice in your head was louder than your own. A look from them could undo your day. One cold message, and your whole nervous system would spike like you touched a live wire. But now, you see their name, and you breathe. You remember what happened, and your body doesn't clench. You hear the story again from someone else, and instead of spinning, you feel grounded. That's growth. They expected silence to mean stagnation, but what they never understood is that silence is soil, and you've been planting new thoughts, new values, new standards. You're not who they left, and they know it. And that's where the obsession deepens. Because now, they not haunted by the idea of hurting you. They haunted by the possibility that losing you might. They've been the biggest mistake they'll never undo. They start to compare. They scroll. They snoop. They replay their moments with you, not to remember the connection, but to try and recognize themselves in your new life. And they can't, because you're not bitter. You're not bending. You're not looking back. You're blooming far from their reach. It's funny how quiet growth terrifies people who rely on chaos to feel important. They don't know how to handle peace. They don't know how to track someone who isn't broadcasting their healing. But growth doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it shows up as not replying to a message just because it's polite. saying no without guilt, laughing without watching the room for approval, no longer over-explaining yourself, letting go of the version of you who needed to be liked more than respected. Those aren't dramatic shifts. They're tectonic, internal, permanent. And here is the real sting. They don't get access to this version of you. Not anymore. They don't get to see how far you've come. They don't get to re-enter now that the storm has passed and your sky is clear. They don't get to claim they always believed in you when they were the reason you stopped believing in yourself for a while. They don't get to witness your resilience like it's a show they bought tickets for because you've changed the locks. Spiritually, emotionally, energetically. Let them knock. Your peace doesn't live at that address anymore. Here's your reflection tonight. What quiet growth have you been dismissing simply because no one applauded it? Maybe it's not drinking just to numb anymore. Maybe it's sleeping better because you're not replaying every conversation. Maybe it is letting go of the need to be seen as the nice one when someone is crossing your boundaries. That's transformation. And it matters, even if no one claps for it. Especially because no one clapped for it. This is your season of unannounced growth. Quiet strength, invisible victories. And one day, if they look at you and don't recognize what they see, good. You didn't heal to become recognizable. You healed to become whole. Let them wonder. You've got deeper things to build. Now that they can't control the narrative, they try to control how others see you. There is a moment, you will feel it in your chest, when the whisper campaigns begin. Suddenly, things are being said about you. Quiet things. Selectively edited things. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to stain. This isn't new. It is a classic move when someone realizes they've lost access to your emotions, but still desperately wants to influence your world. They can't make you look back, so they try to make others look at you sideways. You'll hear it in fragments. She's just cold now. He ghosted everyone, not just me. They've been acting kind of fake lately. It's subtle, always filtered through someone else's mouth. Always one step removed, so they can claim innocence. Because here's the truth. People who manipulate often rely on perception more than reality. Once they lose their grip on you, they try to manage the image of you, to keep the control alive somewhere. And that's a full-time obsession for them. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. So, you don't correct the rumors. You don't gather receipts. You don't pull friends into corners to plead your case. You just keep walking. Because what they're trying to do is bait you. They want you to break your silence. To rise up in defense. To spiral, over-explain, and prove your innocence in a court of public opinion that's already been seeded with doubt. And when you don't, when you remain calm, kind, consistent, it drives them to desperation. You're no longer participating in the image maintenance. You're not trying to control how anyone sees you. You're just living in a way that contradicts the lies, and letting that be the proof. Let's paint the picture. You walk into a room, a work meeting, a gathering, a mutual friend's party. You notice a few eyes flicker when you enter. There's tension in the air, subtle but sharp. You know, you've heard. You could confront it, but you don't. You move with ease. Say hello, smile, offer help. Speak gently, not to prove anything, but because that's who you are now. And one by one, the assumptions start to crack. Because people don't always believe what you say, but they do notice how you carry yourself. Time reveals character. Patterns speak louder than rumors. And those who are meant to see the truth, they will. You don't need to rush it. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Some people you trusted might believe the version of you that was handed to them by someone threatened by your growth. That kind of betrayal, the passive kind, the I just wasn't sure what to think kind, cuts deep, but it also clarifies your circle. It shows you who was watching with curiosity and who was watching with care. The real ones, they'll ask, they'll notice. They'll see how your story doesn't match the script being passed around. And the rest, let them gossip. Let them sit in rooms and dissect someone they no longer know. You've stopped letting borrowed opinions live rent-free in your peace. Here's the question to ask yourself now. Whose version of you are you still trying to manage, and why? Are you afraid of being misunderstood? Left out? Painted as the villain? Here's the truth. Growth will make you misunderstood. Peace will look like pride to people addicted to your chaos. Boundaries will look like cruelty to those who used to benefit from your lack of them. Let it. You weren't made to fit neatly inside someone else's version of your story. You were made to write your own. So tonight, instead of trying to correct the narrative, just live the truth louder. Live it without permission, without explanation. Because what terrifies those who want to control the narrative is a story that keeps unfolding beautifully without their fingerprints on it. Let them obsess over your image. You've got a life to build and a truth that doesn't need a spokesperson. Your evolution makes them irrelevant, and that's the part they can't forgive. There comes a quiet turning point where you realize you've outgrown the entire experience. Not just the betrayal, not just the person, but the emotional ecosystem they created, the drama, the intensity, the way everything revolved around their presence or absence. It doesn't fit you anymore. Not in your body, not in your life, not in your nervous system. And here's what they never expected, that one day you'd evolve so far beyond what they knew of you, they'd no longer recognize the landscape of your mind. They wanted you stuck, mourning, frozen, looping back. But instead, you grew wings. You see, people who betray you don't always feel guilty. Sometimes, what they really feel is irrelevance. They watch you go on, not just surviving, but thriving without them, and it burns. Because now, you're proof of something they can't undo, that they weren't your defining moment. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." And you've done that. You didn't let their failure dictate your future. You stopped defining your self-worth through the lens of someone who couldn't even manage their own. You've started choosing different people, different thoughts, different standards. You're not looking for intensity anymore. You're looking for peace. And that shift, that quiet internal realignment, it renders them powerless. Because they built a version of you that needed them. That needed chaos to feel alive. That needed conflict to feel attention. But the new you don't need their version. You're writing your own. Here's what stings for them. You're not correcting their story. You're not performing your healing online. You're not circling back. You're just gone. Not in anger, not in malice, but in maturity. You stopped chasing the same conversations. You stopped trying to prove you were worth decency. You stopped trying to make someone see what they were committed to misunderstanding. You stopped needing to be seen by them because you finally saw yourself. And that realization, that inner anchor, it makes them irrelevant, not as a person, but in your story, in your healing, in your decisions. They may still try to stir it up, message you, reach out as a friend, drop nostalgic breadcrumbs, but they'll notice something chilling to them. Their name doesn't shake your hands anymore. Their attention doesn't feel like oxygen. Their silence doesn't feel like punishment, because you've stopped building your emotional weather around their mood. Let's visualize this. You're walking along a pier, cool breeze, sunset hitting just right, and someone from your past walks by. Someone who once occupied every corner of your mind. You nod, smile maybe, and keep walking. No tension, no urgency, no collapse. That small moment says everything. You're no longer trying to rewrite the past. You're living fully in the now, and they're not part of it. And the thing they'll never admit? That irrelevance cuts deeper than your silence ever did, because it confirms their deepest fear. They don't matter to you anymore. Not because you're cruel, not because you want revenge, but because peace taught you what love never did, how to choose yourself fully, unapologetically, consistently. Here's your question tonight. What part of your past are you still secretly trying to keep relevant? And what would happen if you just let it go? Maybe it's a conversation you keep replaying, a person you keep checking on, a version of yourself you keep trying to explain away. What if you just released it? Not with bitterness, but with a quiet nod. Thank you for the lesson. I'm done now. You see, betrayal is painful, but staying emotionally entangled in it long after the harm is done, that's optional. And tonight, you choose different, because your future, it's not built on being remembered by the wrong people. It's built on becoming unforgettable to the right ones, by living your truth fully, with no need for revenge, reaction, or repetition. Let them wrestle with their irrelevance. You've got better places to be. You no longer respond because it no longer hurts. And that is your quiet victory. There's a calm that settles in when the ache finally fades. Not all at once, not dramatically. Just gradually, like a fog lifting, like a weight you didn't realize you were still carrying quietly slipping off your back. You don't notice the exact moment it happens. But one day, you see their name, and you don't flinch. You hear the story again, and your jaw doesn't tighten. You remember what they did, and your chest stays still. And that stillness? That's your win. Because silence isn't a strategy anymore. It's a state. A natural byproduct of healing that's gone all the way in. You're not holding back out of spite. You're not being quiet to punish them. You're just not interested in the conversation anymore. You've walked too far ahead to turn back and narrate it again. Seneca said, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. And you've been courageous every day in small, unseen ways. You've been waking up and not texting them. You've been remembering the good times without collapsing into the illusion. You've been letting the old version of yourself, the one who begged, explained, fought, rest. And the absence of pain? That's not numbness. That's completion. You're not waiting for their apology, not hoping they'll get it, not reading their subtweets like scripture. You're just here, present, rooted. It's not that you've forgotten. It's that the memory no longer controls the thermostat of your spirit. Think of it like this. You used to carry their voice in your head, like background music. Every decision ran through their filter. Every achievement felt incomplete without their acknowledgement. But now, you live in your own soundtrack. One they can't edit. One they don't even have access to. That's what hurts them now. Not your silence. Not your absence. But the fact that you're no longer carrying the wound they handed you. Because deep down, some people want to hurt you just enough to own a piece of you. But healing fully, becoming whole in places they cracked, it returns your heart back to you. And they can't reach it anymore. You see, people who hurt you often assume that if they ever need to make things right, you'll still be in the same emotional place they left you. Still tender. Still waiting. Still within reach. But you've changed. Coordinates. Emotionally. Mentally. Spiritually. And now when they reach for the version of you they hurt, they find air. You're not there. Not bitter. Not broken. Not available. And that's the twist. You never had to win the argument. You just had to stop attending it. Let's bring this home with a simple moment. You're out for a walk. The sun is soft, and your thoughts are light. Suddenly, a memory surfaces. Something they said. Something that once destroyed you. You pause, let it rise, breathe, and let it drift away. No judgment. No spiral. No need to do anything with it. It came. It passed. You stayed peaceful. That's your quiet victory. Not that you're over it, but that you've reclaimed your response. You no longer react, because it no longer hurts. Here's your question for tonight. What are you ready to stop bleeding over, even in silence? Maybe it's an old insult that still echoes. Maybe it's the way they left. Maybe it's something you never got to say. Whatever it is, what would it feel like to set it down for good? Not with a dramatic farewell. Just a whisper in your soul. I'm done carrying this, because healing isn't loud. It's a series of small, consistent releases. And the final one? That moment, you no longer need them to feel anything about it. You're already free. Your peace becomes permanent the moment you stop performing for closure. There is a specific kind of freedom that wraps around your chest when you finally drop the script. You know the one, that imaginary scene where they finally get it, where they apologize, admit everything, and validate the storm they left you in. It's the emotional play you rehearsed 100 times in your mind. Maybe you were calm, maybe you broke down, maybe you forgave them with trembling grace, maybe you slammed the door. Whatever the version, you've run it, again and again, hoping that someday life would cast them back into your story so the scene could play out, and you could finally be at peace. But you're older now, not in years, maybe, but in wisdom. You're tired of scripts that never get acted out, and suddenly, you're ready to walk off the stage. No performance, no curtain call, just real peace. Epictetus reminds us, freedom is the name of virtue. Slavery is the name of vice. None can be free who is a slave to his appetites. And here's the insight. Needing their understanding was just another appetite. One rooted in justice and fairness and the very human desire to be seen. But peace? Peace says you can be unseen and still okay. You don't need the applause or the reconciliation or the vindication. You just need the truth and a willingness to live it without anyone else's permission. That's when peace becomes permanent. When it's no longer something you keep checking, something you need others to notice, something you use to prove a point. It's just who you are now. Let me take you there. You're sitting in a coffee shop. It's quiet. Rain on the windows. You're reading something, a book, maybe, or just scrolling your phone. Someone walks in behind you. You don't turn around. You don't check. You don't brace for impact. Because your nervous system no longer lives in a world where their presence is a threat. Later, you find out it was them. And the fact that you didn't feel it? That's the win. Your peace is no longer conditional. Not on their guilt. Not on their absence. Not on their memory of you. You've stopped needing to perform healing. You're just living it. And that's where the obsession ends. Because when someone loses control over how you feel, when they realize their name no longer triggers, inspires, or infuriates you, they lose control over the illusion of importance they built. You've moved beyond the wound, not by denying it happened, but by refusing to let it define you. So the final question tonight, what part of your healing still feels like a performance? And what would it mean to stop? Maybe you're trying to prove you're over it by smiling wider. Maybe you're trying to show the world how strong you are, because you still don't feel it, not fully. Maybe there is still a part of you waiting for someone to see how well you've moved on. But true peace is quiet. It doesn't demand to be seen. It just is, and you've earned it. So take it. No performance. No encore. Just freedom. Let's slow everything down now. You've made it all the way here, through the fire, through the fog, through the strange stillness that healing always brings. Maybe you didn't expect this version of peace. Maybe it feels different than what the movies promised. But here it is, real, quiet, grounded, yours. This wasn't about them. It never really was. It was about you, reclaiming your breath, your thoughts, your space. Unlearning the lie that someone else needs to validate your healing. Relearning how to be okay without performance, without permission. Some people never get this far. They stay chasing apologies, replaying old scenes, hoping their pain will be noticed. But you stepped off the stage. You chose peace without applause. And now you get to rest. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. So as you sit here now, with the hum of the night around you, maybe a fan, maybe the faint sound of rain, let this be your reminder. You didn't survive to stay bitter. You didn't grow just to prove a point. You didn't heal to win them back. You did it to return home to yourself. So breathe in, breathe out, you're here. You're whole, and they don't get to live in your head anymore. Let them wonder where you went. You've gone where they can't follow, into your peace.